Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk, the podcast where we break down storytelling across books, television, and film with a special love for book-to-screen adaptation. Here, we talk about craft, character arcs, structure, dialogue, visual language, and the creative choices that shape how a story lands. If you like thoughtful conversational deep dives into the stories you can't stop thinking about, you're in the right place. Let's talk. Before we get into today's episode, I do want to give a quick content note that we will be discussing themes of depression and suicide, as well as spoilers for The Long Game. If those topics are sensitive for you, feel free to pause or skip this episode if you need to. Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Lo and I are back, and we were reheating episode 5, and were struck by Alexei's face during the funeral confrontation, and it became very clear to us that we needed to do an in-depth character discussion on Alexei, formerly known as Andrei Rozanov. To start, Jacob wrote him in the show with a much richer background, and he also couldn't remember that his name was Andrei in the book and then decided to leave it when he did realize, which feels fitting since we suspect he will continue to be relevant and have a big impact going forward, where so far in the book, Ilya has left Andrei behind in Russia and has never looked back.
And to be clear, Alexei, I have always in my head said Alexei.
You can call him any, yeah.
Well, now
Alexei.
I feel like now I need to go watch the whole episode to figure it out. But, so forgive me, I'm going to go in between Alexei and Alexei, probably, but not Andrei. At any rate, to be clear, Alexei is, like his predecessor, a flaming pile of dog shit in season 1. But even if we never get a redemption arc for him, it's still worthwhile to reflect on why he is the way he is, how that impacted Ilya's development, and the insights we can glean from his larger and more complex showings in the TV show.
So first, we think we'll take you through the funeral confrontation scene and all of our new discoveries, and then we'll spin out into everything else that we've been questioning, assuming, speculating on, given Jacob's changes. And you and I both, I think, agree that this character, as written by Jacob, is such a really beautiful example of how to build a complex character that has very little screen time, effectively.
Yes, and deep, damaging imperfections.
Yes. So in episode 5, the funeral scene between Ilya and Alexei is probably the meatiest part of their interactions in the show, given that we really only see them talking on the phone prior to this moment. This is the first time we see them face to face with one another. And it starts off with the two of them across the dinner table. So Alexei is on one side at the other end with his daughter, and he's staring at Ilya. And this is probably a microcosm of his last 5 months, where we can see him sitting at the table, but he's not really present there, even though he's with his family. He kind of has this look in his eye that he's thinking about something else very
angry,
deeply, and
anxious, distant glare.
His anger is evident, and him and Ilya have almost this unspoken understanding of what is about to happen between the two of them, because we then see Ilya stand up from the table without the two of them even passing a word. It's just a glare. And Ilya excuses himself and makes himself available for Alexei to find him in that back hallway.
And I also think it's worth noting that he does break that stare to briefly smile at his daughter. And I think that is probably what's been going on for the last 5 months. Is he's taking care of his dying father. He's fielding, demands of accountability from his rich brother across the world. And then when he isn't with his father, he's with his family, but there's not really much of him left, if there ever was any, to go around.
And when we see him meet Ilya in that back hallway space, we notice that he touches his nose. And a lot of people in my comments on TikTok have said that probably was some sort of a tie-in to his drug use. But you and I both on the most recent rewatch clocked that he's nervous throughout this entire conversation with Ilya, and Ilya touches his nose when he's nervous as well. So we were thinking that might have been an inherited cue.
I also think it's worth noting that Ilya does this when he's nervous, and I have spun an entire theory that he inherited this from Alexei because Alexei would have been 4 years older than him. And so let's say that Ilya was 6, 8, 10. He would have had his brother who was more aware of whatever was about to happen in his house. And it sounds like there were explosive things happening in his house. And if every time that Alexei got tense and nervous when things were about to go down, he sniffed and touched his nose, Ilya would have picked that up. And also, I think it is worth noting that even though Alexei feels like the bully, he's nervous in this moment because really Ilya has all the power.
Yeah,
and
he definitely does. I don't think Alexei has ever felt like he's ever had power.
Ever. It quickly went from his father to Ilya. Yeah. They're in the back room. He sniffs his nose. And then the next thing that happens is that Alexei puts his hands on Ilya. And Ilya immediately yells, "Get your hands off me." And Alexei immediately tells him to be quiet because of everyone that's outside eating. And to me, that says that Alexei has not lost control. He's very aware of what's happening around them, which gives like a bastardized version of eldest daughter, is like that you are aware at all times of what other people are perceiving and controlling a situation. And it also tells me that losing control is not required for him to engage in physical altercation.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be prompted to the point of no return for him to engage in it. Yeah.
It's a tool that he uses often because he is still aware enough to shush Ilya.
Yeah.
So the next thing that happens of note is that Alexei calls Queen Sveta. I'm working on my Russian pronunciation of Svetlana's nickname. And so he says, now we have to listen to this whore run her mouth. And I think that probably is a sentence right out of his father's mouth about their mother. Yeah. Because it rolls right off his tongue.
Yeah.
And on top of that Ilya hears that, and it is
triggering, probably.
Triggering, because it's something that his father would say about their mother, who he was never old enough to protect. But also, he cares deeply for Svetlana, and so that's a wrap for him, and he goes at Alexei. And Svetlana says, he's not worth it, he's not worth anything.
Which is a great way for us to infer, given that we know she's a childhood friend, that anything she says about him would be coming from an educated place.
Yeah,
she's known him for as long as she's known Ilya. And so her opinion of him was formed over a long period of time through many, many interactions, most likely. And so that carries a lot of weight when you make her a childhood friend. For her to chime in and say anything just adds another level of complexity to the whole interaction between them.
And Ilya does get a right hook in, which I'm sure humbles Alexei, because Alexei has always used physical altercation to his benefit.
And has been bigger than him.
And Ilya probably has never been pushed to physical altercation before, because the number one rule with his father was that you just take it. You don't engage. You don't rise up, because you're never going to win. You're never going to intimidate him, so you don't want to start that fire.
Well, and also, if you're thinking about it in terms of hockey culture, he had said, well, he says in the long game, he reflects on how he used hockey as an escape for his anger when he was young. And he was able to channel it in a different way through sport. So he wouldn't have had to enter into any of these types of like physical altercations when he was younger, because he was in a hockey rink.
Yeah.
So he was dealing with it in a very different way than probably Alexei had learned to do, because he didn't have that type of environment to funnel all of his anger into. He was dealing with it in a very unhealthy way.
And then Ilya's face is as close to like demonic possession you're ever going to get.
Yeah.
I mean, he is
shaking,
disturbed.
Yeah, his hand is shaking.
And then in turn, Alexei's face, to me, is pure terror.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever seen Ilya this way. And if any point he's ever seen Ilya be so emotional and angry that he needs to be physically restrained, it was probably when their mother died.
But he was 12.
Right.
So very different.
Very different. But it is probably the most emotion he's ever seen out of Ilya, maybe save for that moment. And it's full circle to be seeing that again, if it's again, at their father's funeral.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I see, possibly, maybe optimistically, on Alexei's face is a childlike vulnerability turning on. Like,
you and I both saw that.
Yeah, like he's so shocked and full of terror that it's like a childlike vulnerability.
Yeah. And he looks like he could cry.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like when you see a parent lose their shit.
Yeah.
Like that someone that's supposed to be protecting you.
Yep.
And I'm sure
it disarms him.
Yes.
The facade he puts on of being this tough, strong bully persona is very quickly stripped away from his eyes, at least. Mm-hmm. And we've not seen him emote anything other than anger in any of the quick scenes we see of him on the phone. Mm-hmm. It's not like we get that much insight into who he is really beyond that, but even at the beginning of the top of the conversation, he doesn't look out of control at all. He's pretty determined to get what he wants out of the conversation, and then as soon as this happens, he just looks totally disarmed.
Mm-hmm. And I think it reveals what is under the anger, which is a fear. And then my biggest swing, and most unlikely, but one can only hope, is that he possibly used to be a protective older brother, and he turned that off for self-preservation at some point at 13, 14, 15. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Well, think about how old Ilya would have been at 14, 15. That would have been around the time when he threw himself into hockey and funneled, after his mother died, he funneled all his energy into that, and that's when their father's attention would have shifted away from Alexei and more so onto Ilya. And so, yeah, I could imagine that he would have changed his tune a little bit as Ilya's role in their family dynamics changed out from underneath him.
Mm-hmm. Ilya became a competitor almost.
Yeah.
And I think that was something else that I saw in his face, in addition to the terror and the vulnerability, was also maybe like a processing when your sibling like becomes emotional in a way that you didn't expect, and you're processing it, and that's why it kind of read as like a older sibling protective thing. Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's if Jacob even writes more of him into anything, we can be hopeful that maybe there's some learnings about him potentially in the therapy sessions.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I think Alexei processes when Ilya is sort of in his arms, he's sort of in Ilya's arms in this big emotion moment, is that Ilya is protecting Svetlana, and he gets to protect Svetlana and stand up to a figure of authority. And I don't think Alexei has ever stood up to a figure of authority. Successfully. And he's never successfully protected the women in his life. Yeah. His mother died. His wife and daughter are not being provided for by him. Mm-hmm. Literally in this room to ask his brother for aid. So once again, Ilya is doing something that Alexei doesn't feel is possible for himself.
Yeah.
And then finally, Alexei is not expecting Ilya to sever ties with him.
No, he's shocked.
And so you see, as Ilya is making his speech about how you'll take what I give you and you'll never speak to me again, and if not, I will destroy you, because he's fully realizing his power and exercising it.
Yep.
And making Alexei feel smaller than he's ever felt.
Yep.
And he was already a pretty small individual. Mm-hmm. Alexei's lip quivers.
Yeah.
And
the way that Jacob filmed this, so that we have a shot up close on his face to see that reaction, so that we can't avoid seeing that part of it. Mm-hmm. And then when he stops, he actually turns and looks at Svetlana first,
which shows you how adrift he feels.
Yes, he's trying to look for anything to save himself basically from what's going on, or get anyone to side with him in any way
or
possible.
Even just like talk Ilya down.
Exactly. And she doesn't, obviously. And then he turns all the way around and has to look himself in the mirror, which is the most unbelievable metaphor. When you just had your younger brother for the first time in your life emasculate you in such a concise, like clinical way, and then you have to turn around and look at yourself in a mirror, look at where he just punched you in the face because you deserved it, and admit to yourself that you are in the wrong and that you got what was coming for you, and walk back out into a room full of people and act like this didn't just happen and your life is falling apart. And you can see him doing what we've seen Ilya do before, which is, straighten himself out so that appearances-wise he looks like everything's normal and masking again.
And I also think when he's looking in that mirror after taking in Ilya's words, he's possibly realizing that he has no one left in this world. Especially, he not only has no one left in the world, he does have his wife and daughter that are relying on him, and he has no way to...
He's been failing them.
Right. And
he's left to his own devices now, and he doesn't feel capable, without Ilya's aid, clearly, to provide for them at all, or at least in the way that they need to be cared for. And that would also be really interesting for him to grapple with, given that he models his entire life after his father, and it would be a moment where he would realize his father's shortcomings, given that he's emulated his father's life and fallen short with his own family. It would be kind of like a light bulb moment of, yeah, my father did truly fail me as well, and failed Ilya, and failed our mother. And yeah, they clearly don't harbor any love for their father at all. I think Ilya does, to a certain extent, have a much softer spot for him. Alexei seems like he's completely resolved himself to not outwardly show any softness towards his father. But I think he does, just he channels it in a different way.
Well, and I also think the father had a much softer spot for Ilya than Alexei.
He did. Also, I like that the lighting in that room is green. It's the only time we see green in the whole show. And for it to be used in that moment when he's being so greedy, emotionally and monetarily, of Ilya, and Ilya finally says, hell no, and shuts the door on him. I thought that was really smart to have that coloring. It was really beautifully shot, that whole scene.
Yeah.
And that was his first day on set, and it was Ksenia's first day on set as Svetlana.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And also, as he's leaving that room, he knows that he's leaving Ilya and Sveta.
Yeah, potentially for the last time.
Well, yes, and also he's going out into a room full of people that don't know him or don't respect him, and they are going to have a moment of emotional comfort.
Yeah.
Like, he's vacating, and Ilya is going to be comforted by Svetlana, and he's going to go back out there and have to do the bravado that his father always did, and everything's fine.
And finish this whole funeral thing because he's the eldest son. It would have fallen on him. We know he's his executor of his will. Like, it doesn't stop for him in this funeral.
Correct. And it never did. And he said, can I get a moment to breathe? And he said, do I get a moment to breathe? Or is that just for...
Well, yeah, and imagine, like, Ilya gets to go back to the States, and he still has to liquidate everything his father owned. He has a stepmom somewhere, theoretically, that he has to grapple with. And what does she want? What does that look like? What is she entitled to? Their family is not doing well financially. So he's inheriting that burden. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, and I think he did make the point, when do I ever get to breathe? Because he took care of the father, and as he's taking care of the father, he's also, in the back of his head, thinking about how it's very uncertain what Ilya's going to do, and he is effectively dependent on Ilya.
Yeah, and has been for a very long time.
And has been, and so he has been scared the whole time, which I think goes into your next great point.
Yeah, so after the scene, which... in a separate conversation, I think it's genius that they used Svetlana's encouragement as the catalyst for Ilya calling Shane in that moment. And we don't get that added context in the book of why Ilya even called and what spurred him to do that. So I think it's really brilliant that the show had this big emotional beat take place and then Svetlana be the person to kind of confirm what he already knows at that point, which is, you have something special with Shane, go take advantage of that. You don't want me, and it's okay. You can go be happy with the person who clearly makes you happy. And for her to say that to him as the only person close to him is huge. So on the phone call with Shane, in the monologue, so Shane doesn't understand anything he's saying, but Ilya does explain out loud to someone that first, in English, his brother is scared, which makes him terrible, and that makes Ilya terrible back. And like you just touched on, the key here is that this kind of lets us know that Alexei is always scared because he's always terrible.
Which tracks because he's a coward. And Ilya has talent, charisma, intelligence to make him confident, and he knows silence is the best way to deal with his father, even with all of those things to stand on.
Yep.
And Alexei has none of those things. And so
yeah,
he's a coward, and he's always scared, and he's always terrible.
In the monologue, when he is speaking in Russian, there's a lot of dialogue that Jacob added to the show that is not pulled from the books, because infuriatingly in the book we have no idea what Ilya says. But what a dream for someone like Jacob to have the opportunity to get to fill in the blank like he did. And he says, he always hated me and I know why, but it kills me, which is a loaded statement, because as the viewer, we start to then wonder, okay, well then what are the reasons that Alexei might have for hating Ilya? And Jacob teased that up so perfectly, because he's now given Alexei a much more complex backstory. And so we're able to make the inferences and draw parallels between his behaviors in the show and what we do know of their dynamic in the source material, which otherwise I don't think would ever be afforded to us as viewers if he didn't beef up his character in the way that he did. So all of those choices lead to a really big payoff in this scene, because it gets you thinking as you're watching about the implications of that statement. If Ilya feels that way, why does he feel that way? And you and I both were really immediately curious about digging deeper into that. And it's clear that he holds a lot of resentment for Ilya.
And just a quick list of all the things that Ilya has that Alexei doesn't. Money, power, status, paternal admiration, looks, youth, personality, and agency.
Yes. Yep.
Next part of the monologue that we reflected on is that he will never forgive me, not for anything, for the fact that I even exist, which is the more exact Russian.
Yes. The subtitles are not accurate.
And so all the different reasons that he might hate him for existing are the next section of our thesis. And the first one is Ilya as an individual, because he has been recognized as an individual since he was a child because of his hockey talent.
Yep.
And Alexei needed to be an obedient soldier under their cop father.
Under his thumb.
Fall in line, follow the mold.
Eldest son.
Emulate everything that his father was.
Yep. You're inheriting the family name, values, traditions.
And meanwhile, in a very much a culture of children should be seen and not heard, Ilya was seen and was a child with talent recognized on all the teams by adults. And then his father flew to the U.S. for his draft, even though he didn't want Ilya to go to the NHL. He wanted him to go to the KHL. And it shows that Ilya has a certain level of free agency to go against his father's wishes and still have his father support him.
Show up there. Yep. Then another point is the luxury of kindness, because Ilya is a very kind person, and he also would have likely received a lot more kindness in his life because he was more naturally a likable personality, probably. He just seems like a genuinely sweet kid and adult and sensitive, and he was also good at sports, so like you just touched on, he would have had way more attention from everywhere, and he's younger. So he would have had different treatment than the stricter expectations of an eldest son.
And I think that Ilya has a softness from his mother. And presumably Alexei loved his mother in that typical maternal way, but he didn't get to keep a softness the way that Ilya does. And so I think that it angers him that Ilya gets to be soft and have a piece of himself that is still soft. And it's playing out in front of him with Svetlana. That, I mean, it seems doubtful that his wife would be in the thick of it like that.
No.
And understand, like, the emotional dynamics.
And the fact that Ilya has maintained a friendship with someone for that long, that person comes back home with him to a funeral. That's a very strong relationship that he's formed with someone. And I don't think Alexei has the ability to form a strong relationship with anybody in the same way. And that's another, again, kind of shortcoming of his that he would be able to weigh up against Ilya, which is that Ilya has seemingly a lot of friends, is liked by everyone. His persona that he would be watching from Russia is one where he's admired for all of the qualities that Alexei was not allowed to exhibit at all.
Yeah, and Alexei had to model himself after his father for any love or respect and for his survival. The next thing is we speculate from every phone call and opportunity that Alexei has to throw gay slurs at Ilya. He takes that opportunity. And it's likely his way of asserting any power over Ilya that he has, even though he's also on the phone with him to ask him to support him.
Yeah, he's entirely dependent upon him.
And with the quote-unquote old school attitude that he and his father live by and Russian cultural norms of the moment, to be financially dependent on a gay person that is supposed to be less than in an unacceptable way would be emasculating.
Totally.
And so that's just one more reason to hate Ilya for existing, in that he is dependent on someone that...
Well, he's escaping the repercussions that are typically expected. Like, he's skirting around. And also, I think in large part that it helps because he's not in Russia. So he's able to kind of get away with being this version of himself, meaning like free of all the expectations Alexei has. He's not under his father's thumb. He's living in another country. He's doing the thing he loves and playing the sport he's good at, and rewarded and rewarded and rewarded for all of these things. Whereas if he was back home in the same situation as Alexei where he couldn't leave, very different situation, I think, and Alexei recognizes that.
And Ilya gets to do all those things, and he is admired in Russia.
Yeah.
And so another reason that Alexei is...
When Ilya calls Alexei during the tuna melt scene after he gets off the phone with his father, Ilya very quickly reminds him on that voicemail that he's paying him to take care of their dad. And we know, in the book it's made more clear, but he does mention that he has a stepmother, Polina, who is much younger than his father, which would make her perfectly capable of being a wife to him and taking care of him. But she's not there. She's nowhere to be found. And I'm sure for Alexei, he would feel as though it's really unfair that Ilya's got no worries in the world. He's off in the U.S. playing a sport for a living. And he's not considering the fact that Ilya has his own things to grapple with when he's in the States. But to Alexei, he's just goofing off with no worries in the world in the U.S., maintaining his family legacy and his image without... Alexei has to uphold all of these things without any of the money or influence to do it.
And also, it's daylight when this phone call is made.
So it would be the middle of the night.
It's the middle of the goddamn night.
Yeah.
The father is like having a fit. And so,
Yeah.
Alexei's probably goddamn sleeping. And where the hell is Polina? And then you've got the brother who, it's one thing to be upset and it's another to be like, and I goddamn pay you. And
well, but to be fair, he's calling Ilya in the middle of the night asking him for money.
Oh, yes. No, again, there's no angel in Alexei. This is all very optimistic. But in this moment...
You can imagine how that would upset him.
Yeah, to be like, God damn it. Like,
yeah, I'm asleep.
I am asleep. Our father is an asshole to me during the day.
Give me peace.
Give me a night of sleep. He probably deserved it, but it is one more. He's not allowed to forget that he needs money from his brother. Yeah. And it never ends. He doesn't ever get to breathe because you know that the father is on him all day, every day. You know that he's got the wife.
Yeah. And that type of care is never ending.
Yes, never ending. And besides the drugs, he doesn't ever have a moment to himself. Like, he's this... And on top of it all, under it all, he doesn't feel good about himself.
No, ever.
Ever.
Yeah. I don't think he ever has.
No.
Yeah. So, a couple of things we've speculated on.
Yeah, we've already begun the speculation, but moving into our speculative section.
Moving into the speculation, we surmise...
We tried to envision what their child
If we're putting ourselves in the shoes of these young men while their mother is alive, more than likely, Alexei was probably a shield for his mother until he got to the age where he was able to leave the house on his own and get out of that very toxic environment and put himself in different situations. And I think he probably, as he grew up and then his mother passes away, probably felt a lot of guilt about leaving in that way and abandoning her and not protecting her anymore once that shift in his age allowed him to leave. And she didn't get to leave.
And also, when you are a child in a situation like that, you don't feel like a child.
No.
So he probably felt a lot of responsibility when he's 16 and his mother dies.
Yeah.
That he doesn't ever get to let go of. And Ilya also couldn't protect his mother, but Ilya was a child and still was able to emotionally connect with his mother.
Yeah, because Alexei was the eldest son and his dad pulled him away from his mother, which left the opportunity for Ilya and his mother to grow much closer than Alexei and his mother would have been.
Yeah. And it's clear Alexei does not develop the same emotional IQ as Ilya does. And again, that is probably because he's the oldest. And
his trauma is different.
Yeah, he's exposed to much harsher things. And he couldn't provide for his mother emotionally, even though he was older. And clearly couldn't physically intervene, even though he probably felt like he should have. And his father probably pitted him against his quote-unquote weak mother, because that is the first thing that Ilya says to Shane is, I don't want you to think she was weak.
Yeah.
So that was...
So you know he was throwing that around
all the
time to both of them. Yep. I think that feeds very much into, in order to really understand either of them, I think that understanding kind of the Russian cultural context that they're raised within is really important, because to us it's unfathomable that that would have been acceptable treatment, and it is. But I think knowing that in that patriarchal society, their mother would be less important to their father than his eldest son. He would put more effort into his eldest son and fostering him, and
especially this father and what we've seen of this father, the colonel. Yeah.
Than his mother. And Ilya picked up on that early on, that he was always accusing her of potentially cheating on him, and he was always looking for fault in her very much.
The woman's been dead for how many years? Over a decade.
Long time, yeah.
And he's like, your mother can't tie a bow tie. And
yeah.
Yes, he is like losing it, but still.
Always belittling her in some way. Yep. And ignoring her needs largely, obviously. She was very alone, and again, we can infer that that is why her and Ilya grew so close to one another, because the father and Alexei were off on one half of the house, you know, and that would leave her with Ilya.
Until Ilya gets good at hockey and shows
that's
hockey
when
prowess.
everything changes.
And so if Alexei ever did have any brotherly instinct, I think it quickly disappears when
their mother dies.
And also his status as like the older son that the father focuses on disappears, because now he's got a little hockey star that he gets to parade around.
Yep.
And so Ilya has everything. He's got the time with his mother, the mother's personality, the looks, and now he's going to be more important to the father.
Yeah.
So he has nothing to feel good about.
No.
And no status within the family.
Yeah. He's obviously left by his mother, and then his father essentially abandons him as well in favor of Ilya.
And then just like another important part of the Russian context is like the sense of duty, and that it kills Ilya that he couldn't take care of his father.
Yeah.
And in a sense of duty, Alexei
has no choice but to take care of his father. But also he is in the father's mold as like the duty patriarch, whatever, but he does not have the chops to back it up. And so he is doomed from the start. Total. Yep. And you see that very early on with his family dynamics, that he's not being a dutiful father or partner or brother.
And so I think that we want to end with looking at everything from Alexei's POV.
Putting ourselves in his shoes and in his head. And with all the context we've been given.
Yes. And so he says himself that he has never had a minute to breathe. He uses the drugs as an escape.
Yep.
And
probably did from a very young age.
Yes. That's probably what he was doing when he was, we've decided, leaving the house.
Leaving the house.
And then he is watching the father die, I'm sure enduring a lot of emotional and verbal abuse from the father because he's distressed on top of everything. Yeah. And while his father is dying, he has no idea what Ilya is going to do about the money.
Yep.
And so he's worrying about that. So there's not even...
And his father didn't have any money left himself.
Correct.
So it's not like he's inheriting anything from him.
Correct.
He's inheriting the problems.
Correct. And then Alexei says himself, I've never had a minute to breathe either. Is that just reserved for people that abandon their families? And so Alexei tells on himself that he feels abandoned.
Yep.
And he was abandoned, like, by his mother, however the circumstances were. And now his father has died and certainly wasn't exactly present for him before that.
Yep.
And his brother abandoned him by going to the U.S. And is about to abandon him fully.
Yep.
And so we establish right before he is cut off that he has an abandonment wound.
Yep.
And then Ilya doubles down.
Just like Ilya has an unlovable wound. Yep. We also talked about how when he was younger, because he's 4 years older than Ilya, he would have been so much more aware of his mother's mental health and the likelihood of her dipping into a very, very dark place in a way Ilya wasn't.
And in particular, he probably would have been aware that his mother was suicidal.
Yeah.
And that comes with a lot of uncertainty and worry. You know, like, every day you don't know when you're waking up, like, what you're going to find.
There's also an interesting thought of, you had mentioned that she might have had postpartum depression that never went away.
Because it was never addressed.
And yeah, he would have been 4, but there could have been a reality in which he would have remembered what she was like before her depression. Because we don't know, there's no way of knowing when it would have started, what would have started it. He could have known her before.
Yeah, and the reason that the postpartum's on the table is because of the way Ilya says that he hates him for existing. And then with his mother, he probably resents his mother for not protecting him from his father and then leaving him in, however little choice she had, like, from his POV. That is, like...
Well, he was so young, he could also just view that as an extremely selfish thing of her to have done, unfortunately.
And we certainly know that he doesn't have a high emotional IQ and that his father does not view mental health as a legitimate concern.
No.
That probably is the narrative anyways.
Yep.
And he was
that she was weak.
Right, and that she was weak. And that, he should blame her. So he's got abandonment from his mother, obviously his father. He probably somewhat hates his father. And he doesn't like being like his father, but he certainly is his father.
Yeah.
But he has no other example of how to be. He was never shown another way to be. It was all strong men who, like, use intimidation. And emulating his father creates safety and some approval.
Yeah.
But
he can't be harmed by him if he is like him.
Correct. But he also had Ilya's mother.
Yep.
And then he's got Ilya as a brother. And so I think that he sees Ilya and is often reminded of his mother and reminded of all the things that he isn't or doesn't get to be.
Yeah.
And then he's a family man, quote unquote. And that means he has responsibilities.
Yep.
And he...
Different from Ilya's.
Totally different from Ilya's. And we have, of course, done the math. And he's married by 21 or 22.
And he's a dad by 23.
And his wife and daughter relying on him is probably reminiscent of his mother relying on him when he couldn't do anything for her. And he clearly doesn't think he can provide money or life for his wife and daughter now.
Yeah, without help.
And just wait until he finds out Ilya has an emotional connection with Shane.
Actually loves his partner.
Can provide for his household and doesn't have to because his partner is also a multi-millionaire.
Yeah. Just another way in which Ilya has everything he cannot and does not and will never have.
Yeah. And then just a couple of other observations. When he calls Ilya, because again, we went through these phone calls and did all kinds of calculations. When he calls up Ilya, he is exercising a security net that Ilya will provide money. And it's sort of like at no matter what age, even as an adult, when your parent dies, you feel a little less protected and a little more alone and a little less looked out for. And I think that security net of being able to call your brother is something, even when it's transactional and it's about money. Mm-hmm. It is a security net, and he fucks with him because it gives him a way to feel bigger when responsibilities that he can't fulfill make him feel small. Mm-hmm. And the only way he can fulfill them is by calling Ilya for more money.
Yep.
And so he already feels small. Then he has to call his brother, and that makes him feel smaller. So
he's got to do something to make himself not feel so pathetic.
Correct. And that usually is him throwing F-bombs at Ilya.
Yeah. We don't need you, Ilya.
Yes.
Yeah. All of those lines are protecting himself from the truth.
We don't need you, but I am calling you.
But
about
I
money.
need you for everything.
For everything. And also, on those phone calls, he says that his father is fine. Papa is fine.
Yeah. But completely ignoring the reality of the situation.
He's ignoring the reality of the situation.
He's in denial.
And, I did get rebuffed for this, but I will say it again. In the most optimistic world, he doesn't mention, if he does notice his father's issues, he doesn't mention them to Ilya because Ilya's across the world. What's he going to do about it? And, that wasn't received well.
I don't think he would ever prevent himself from telling Ilya how bad it's gotten to protect his feelings.
Correct.
I just don't. He's just too big a piece of shit.
Correct.
And he doesn't have the emotional intelligence to, be considerate at all.
Correct. But I do think that his father ignored his mother's mental health issues, and so he's going to ignore his father's mental health issues.
But that has nothing to do with keeping them from...
I know. Listen, it was a shot in the rainbow land, okay? And then the last thing.
Okay, if Alexei was afforded a Russian monologue, even if it was just an internal one, she wrote what he would say.
Yes.
To himself or into the void.
Yeah, we were, of course, watching the long-awaited Russian monologue.
Again.
And we were doing that after looking at the funeral scene through the eyes of Alexei.
Yes.
And so as Ilya was talking, I was thinking, no one is the villain in their own story. Mm-hmm. And Alexei could probably say a lot of the same things, which makes sense because they have a lot of the same wounds. Mm-hmm. But again, has a whole lot less capability than Ilya on every front.
Yes.
So this is Alexei's internal Russian monologue. Everybody leaves me. Everyone wants something from me. Mother, protect me. Father, be the perfect son, fill the mold, be strong, be tough. Brother, take care of Papa. My brother hates me because I'm like our father, but I had no choice. He gets to choose because he got out. I could not leave, and it meant Ilya got left alone and got to be something else. But it's never enough, and I'm a constant fuck-up. Everyone is always telling me how I fall short, that I'm not worth anything, shout out Svetlana, and I'm a bad person. Mm-hmm. And he's got no way to go up from there either.
No. Especially now that Ilya has cut him off.
Completely.
Yeah.
He just has to go back out into that funeral.
Yeah.
And keep up appearances.
And the fact that Jacob Tierney builds this complex a character with 3 phone calls, a few text messages, and this one funeral scene is a feat.
Yes. And big ups to Slavic for the 10,000 words he says with his funeral face.
Yeah, he's just as great an emotive actor as everybody else on this show, I think. And him coming in as a character actor in this way. And I think, too, what's really cool about this storyline and how well fleshed out it is I, reading the book, could take or leave Andrei by the end of it. Mostly leave, because he didn't really add anything other than frustration, and he instigated Ilya, and yeah, you need that to some degree, but at a certain point, he's not moving any of the plot further. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think that the way he's Jacob set up Alexei in the show, and also included the trust for his niece, or Alexei's daughter, and we've seen the daughter grow up on screen, as subtle as she is featured. Mm-hmm. We've seen that. They could take this, and I would actually be thrilled if he showed up on my screen again in season 2, because I'm now enthralled with what's going on here. Mm-hmm. I don't need him to be redeemed.
Yeah.
I just find him interesting, and he's such a great window into Ilya that he's not in the books.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the same way.
I agree. And I think even if someone is not worth anything, they are still a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And to write them off as anything less is to do a disservice to the story.
Yes. I think that in an ideal world, Ilya going to therapy and discussing his family life, because we know he does in the book, will include really deconstructing this relationship with Alexei, because in the book he really only digs deep about his mother and his father, and he doesn't touch on his relationship dynamic with his brother. And now you have such a unbelievable foundation to work off of.
Yeah.
For a big payoff.
And I think, as we've said, Ilya's major wound is being unlovable. And he says flat out in the Russian monologue, my brother hates me. He's always hated me for existing. And I think if he, in therapy, looks at Alexei's life and Alexei's POV, he'll realize that
it's not that.
Yeah, Alexei doesn't hate him. He feels abandoned. And Ilya is one of the people that's abandoned him, and it's salt in the wound. But he doesn't hate him because Ilya is Ilya.
Yeah.
And so...
and that's on human dynamics and complicated relationships and...
And that's on the reheat keeps on giving.
Yes, it really does.
It just keeps coming.
So, I know he's a controversial character, but we would love to hear your opinions and thoughts on Alexei and what Jacob has done with his character, how he compares to the book, if you want to see more of him in season 2, because we both do. And yeah.
Even a flaming pile of dog shit throws warmth.
Eloquently put. As always, if you've made it to the end, thank you so much for listening. And we will be back with a new episode to talk about another, probably, heated rivalry topic with you all.
For now.
For now.
Bye.
Bye.